Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's KETIV Autodesk Virtual Academy. I'm Nigel Mbayek, your host for today, and this is Eric Paul. Eric Paul has worn many hats around here, and the hat he's worn recently is, with some of the data management tools, both Vault and Fusion Lifecycle.
Yep.
In addition to a bunch of other crazy programming things. So that's just a few of the things that he does around here, and that's why he's here today for AVA.
So today we're going to learn about really what is the purpose of Lifecycles and Vaults, and we'll go over what it can do, what issues it solves, and we'll go over a basic workflow of a lifecycle and see how to set that up in Vault. Finally, we'll see what the end user experience looks like once that's all set up. So if you're not using Vault already, chances are you're using something like Dropbox or a shared network folder, and that can bring a few issues. So maybe you'll have multiple people working on the same file, and this can mean overwriting files and other issues trying to save the file at the same time. This is bad. Maybe non-released drawings are making it to the shop floor. This can mean thousands of parts ordered wrong because they were looking at the wrong version of the file. Changes can be made to files in review. And what the person is seeing to review may have been edited by someone else since it was submitted. And also, all files are visible at all times. And you may not want your sales or quality team to see files that aren't finished. And so this is really why Vault matters to resolve issues like this. The way we like to explain it is that Vault gives the right access to the right people at the right time. This is really the fundamental thing that Lifecycles solves. And so what it does is gives you a permissions and security-based framework for your data. So of course we have the check-in, check-out system for files, and that part is in Vault Basic as well. But with workflows, we can set it so that that one person can only be working on that file depending on what state it's in. Or even view the file depending on what state it's in. So we can set it so that the sales or quality teams can only see released files. And we can also lock files so that reviewers can be certain they're looking at the correct version of a file to review. And then of course, the automatic revision bumping. So when we move that finished released file and we need to make a revision to it, take it back to work in progress, it'll automatically set that for us.
Bump the rev to the next letter, number, whatever your convention is.
And I'll explain a little bit about that at the end as well, because there are options.
There are options.
So let's take a look at what this means in practice with a basic workflow. So here we have just a really basic workflow. Starts in work in progress. We can move things over to review back and forth as the file gets finished. Once it's ready to be released, only go this direction, can't go back. And maybe you have some very small errors, like you get someone's name wrong on a drawing. So we've got this little quick change state. And if you need to make a more major change, we can take it back to work in progress, and that'll give a revision bump.
Yep. If you hear us say the word whip all the time, we're not like cool whipping it or
it's true.
Any of that stuff. It's work in progress. So you're going to hear us say that a lot. I use the acronym all the time. People are like, what are you whipping? Like, well, I'm whipping the drawing. So yeah, just a couple of things for those who might not be completely familiarized.
Yep. So in order to get this working the way we want, we need to look at permissions. So here I've got set up the permissions I want, and this is really all based off of groups. So for groups, I have set here administrators, engineering, product design, and sales. And you can see all the colored lines here. These are for blue transitions. We want administrators, engineering, and product design to be able to do that. And for the red arrows, we want administrators and engineering. You can kind of think of those as kind of a review board or something, the way it's set up here.
People with extra power.
Yes. So let's just do a quick walkthrough here. Starting at WIP, just about everybody can push it to review. And once it gets there, the review board can either reject it, send it back to WIP, or accept it and push it to release. And once it's at release, if we need to make that quick change, just about everybody should be able to do that. And if we need to make more major change, same thing, the same blue line, back to work in progress. Now, you'll notice that there's no sales group that are able to affect any of these changes. And that's on purpose. We just want them to consume the files. We don't want them to make changes to these.
Yep, and you can change their security to be able to see files in certain states, things like that. This isn't, you know, the flowchart we have on the screen isn't indicative of every vault, every workflow ever.
Right.
You can customize these however you want. You can do whatever transitions you want, so on and so forth. This is just a standard one. You know, we see most of our customers use some version of this, at least having these 4 things, and the transitions between them. There might be like 2 review states or whatever. You can pretty much do whatever you want with the customization.
Yeah, this part's really flexible.
Yep. That's why there's one called flexible release processor.
It's true. So lastly, now that we have the transition permissions set up the way we want, we need to decide how these groups can interact with files when they're at each of these states. So the way I have it set up here, for the WIP state, the permissions I want are groups 1 through 3, that's administrators, engineering, product design. We want them to be able to read any files at this state. We want that same group to be able to modify files at that state. And we only want administrators to be able to delete files. And we don't want the sales team to see these files at all. And that's going to be true for sales all the way until released. The next state over at review, we want the groups 1 through 3 to be able to read the file, but nobody should be able to modify it. Nobody should be able to delete it. And of course, no sales team looking at these files either. So this means the file is locked and the reviewer can be sure this is definitely the right version of the file that he should be looking at.
Yep. If that's not the case, you know, somebody back in the engineering team can edit that file in there if this wasn't the case. And then maybe, you know, half of your review board is looking at one version of the file, the other half is looking at something that's slightly updated, and then you've got some weird syncing issues there. Half of them will reject it, half of them will accept it, and you're going to be like, what is going on?
Yeah,
these are things you want to avoid.
And this is how you avoid it. The next state, over at release. Now we want everybody to be able to read it. So now the sales team is looped in, but nobody should be able to modify, nobody can delete, and it's a locked file. So this is the finished version. We shouldn't be touching it. And if we need to make that really quick change, we move it down here and we have this set up so that those first 3 groups can read it and modify it. And again, sales team should not be able to see this, just the released. All right, so let's take a look at how this translates into setting up a lifecycle in Vault, taking this flowchart and actually implementing it.
And before we do that, I'll stop real quick
Sure.
and just see if anyone has any questions before we get into Vault itself. I know there were a couple of questions coming through. First off is Dennis asking, can I use Vault Pro 2016 with Product Design Suite 2018? No, but yes. I need a little bit more detail there, Dennis. If you're using Inventor 2018, you definitely can't use Vault 2016. Vault has to be the newest program or equal to the newest. So Vault has to be 2018 if Inventor's 2018, or if you have Inventor 2017, you can use Vault 2017 or Vault 2018. Vault just has to be equal or newer.
Yes.
Than the actual CAD tools. But if you have Product Design Suite 2018, you actually have access to Inventor 2016. Contact me after, Dennis, and we'll sort it all out for you before we move on here.
Yeah, but that's very important to note that the Vault has to be the most newest.
The most newest?
That's great English, isn't it?
So we'll move on. Like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the GoToWebinar chat panel at any time. And while Eric is going through these, I can answer them, via typing, or we can pause for a moment.
Yep. So the first thing we're going to want to set up is the groups, because that's what drives all of these permissions.
Yep. And just to clarify, Eric is using a regular Vault client here. You need administrative capabilities to be able to create like lifecycles and stuff. But you don't need to do it on the server end. You do it from within your client end.
Yes.
So this is a Vault client. This is the program you open on your computer, and it gives you certain permissions based on your
Just make sure
permissions.
you have administrative privileges on the client.
Yeah, your user is admin or close to it, I guess. There's a couple of roles where you can do a couple things. So.
Yeah. So speaking of administration, we're going to go down to Tools and Administration and Global Settings. Now, here's where you're going to set up your users. I'm going to assume you've already got those set up. And we're going to go straight to Groups. Now, the groups we wanted were Administrators, Engineering, Product Design, and Sales. So I've already got them here, but let's take a look at one. We can pretend we're making it new, and it'll look the same as if we're clicked on New Group. So to start, we've got the group name. Obviously, that's administrators for this one. And the next thing you're going to want to set is this vaults. This is what associates your group to a specific vault. Now, most of the time, you guys are only going to have one vault, maybe two if you have a sandbox. So this should be pretty simple to understand which ones you want to assign this group to. So now we've got that set. And you'll notice down here that there's a groups option. Yes, you can have groups within groups. And no, you don't want to do this. This is a terrible, terrible idea. Unless you have to, we really recommend you avoid putting groups within groups.
Yes, this isn't an exhibit thing.
Yeah.
Here you like groups, so I put a group in your group. No, don't do that.
Doesn't work here. Do make sure the group is enabled if you want to use it. And finally, we'll go ahead and add users to this group.
Yep. Generally, when we set up vaults for people, a lot of these groups are already predetermined. Kind of go through that process with the customer themselves. So you might already have groups, but if you don't, Eric's helping you figure that one out.
Yep. So let's go here and just filter to users. And let's add the people we want to this administrators group. For instance, we can do Jose, approver, and Eric1.
You should add JP admin. He has admin in his name.
It's true. I like that guy. We'll go ahead and add those, hit OK. And now you can see we've added those group members to administrators. All right. I will go ahead and hit OK here. And now that the groups are set up, we're going to go straight to Lifecycles. Go ahead and close out of these, back to Tools, Administration, and now we're going to go to Vault Settings. From here, we're going to go to the Behaviors tab and click on Lifecycles. Here we can see a list of all the lifecycles that are currently in place. So I believe all of these are default ones that Vault comes with. And let's just start taking a look at some of them. For instance, long lead time. So this is a more complicated setup than we need. Maybe we just need basic. Here we go. This looks pretty close. So we have a work in progress, for review, released, and this one has an obsolete, and we want a quick change. But let's just go ahead and start with this one, and we'll edit it to do what we want. Now, if you wanted to create your own from scratch, just go ahead and click New here. It's going to look exactly the same. We're going to do the same steps. OK, so we've gone ahead and edited this, and of course, we've got our name up here. And you can see the various states. And the obsolete one, we don't want this at all. We can just go ahead and remove and hit apply, and now it's gone. And what we want to add in its place is the quick change. We'll go ahead and click add, put the name, quick change, and a state description of small clerical changes to released files. Click OK, hit apply, so now it exists. And the first thing we'll look at is the security tab. So you can see that by default, a new state starts with no security. This means anybody is able to manage files that are at this state. Now, this isn't how we want it. Let's go back to our chart and see exactly what we were looking at. So for quick change, we wanted this state to have groups 1 through 3, that's administrators, engineering, product design. We want them to be able to read the file and modify the file, but not delete the file. And again, sales should not be able to see this. All right, so let's go back in there and set it up for that. So first we start by unchecking this so that now it's security based. And we'll go ahead and add those groups. Down to groups. And these are the ones we set up earlier. We've got administrators, engineering, and product development. Go ahead and OK. And you can see this pops in, administrators, engineering, product development. All by default, it's allowing them to read and doesn't have anything for modify. So let's add that. Go ahead and click allow and allow. Now you'll notice there's also a deny option. Yes, you could click it. We don't recommend it. Most of the time we've run into issues with people saying, hey, how come I can't do this? Somewhere somebody is set to deny.
Yeah, explicit denies are not like the greatest thing in the world to use. So try to avoid using explicit denies if possible. If you want to go over why and some really weird scenarios, let us know. Well, when we've run into people not being able to do things in the vault out of randomness, there's probably like some explicit deny somewhere in the back somewhere that's denying somebody something.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find that. So
and so on that same note, you'll notice I didn't add sales here, and I didn't say deny, deny, deny. I just don't have them on here at all. By default, unless you're explicitly given permission, you don't have permission. So we've now set up this state so that only administrators, engineering, and product development groups can read and modify. Nobody else can do that. All right, go ahead and hit apply. And let's take a look at the next tab. So this tab, really you don't have to deal with a whole lot. If you're on a release state, you do want to make sure that this box is checked. This is kind of the machine way of letting Vault know it's a release state. Just typing in released here doesn't actually let Vault know. This is how it knows this is a release state.
Yeah, if you have that checkbox checked in work in progress, it'll be a release state.
Yes.
And that's how you get that lock. If you're just wondering, like, what does that lock mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it means.
And technically, you could click release state on all of them. You don't want to do that. All right, if it's an obsolete state, if you remember, we had that obsolete state here that we got rid of. We don't need it for this. You'd want to do the same thing.
Yep. Sometimes people just want to, it gives you the maximum amount of flexibility, right? If you just want to add an obsolete state, maybe you have a workflow like that. You want to keep the files in there, but you're not going to use them in actual production. Hey, that's what the obsolete state's there for. You have the ability to do that. So there's a lot of flexibility here.
Yeah. The next section here is for purging. Now, if just real quickly, you can read down here what they all do. Either they all purge, first and last, last, none. They give pretty good descriptions down here of all of that. Lastly, the comments tab. Now this one's a little bit interesting. This sets the default comment that happens when you get to this state. So for instance, if you're going from work in progress to review and you just want a simple submitted to review, we can set that there. Or in this case, the quick change of just making a small clerical change. Now that'll become the default comment when you move it to there. Yes, you can change it as you go, but that's just set as the default. Okay, now we have the state set up, and now we'll look at the transitions regarding quick change. And let's take a quick look back at the chart, and we can see we want this blue section back and forth between quick change and release. Again, administrators, engineering, and product design. So we want to take a look at quick change to review and quick change, released, quick change to released, and from released to quick change. So we'll go ahead and edit that, move over to security, and similarly uncheck this no restrictions so that we do have restrictions, and we'll add those 3 groups. We'll do administrators and engineering and product development. Add those, and now they are explicitly allowed. No one else is allowed to do this change. We'll do the same for this one, release to quick change. And we go to groups, administrators, engineering, and product development. Add those. Okay. Now, you'll notice I had to uncheck that box on both of these. That means if you want to restrict the ability of anybody to go from quick change to work in progress, is that wasn't part of our setup. We need to go into edit, security, uncheck this, but not add anybody. This means nobody will be able to go from quick change to work in progress.
Because that's not on your flow chart.
Exactly.
So just do that for all of the other possible transitions. So quick change to review, quick change to, or review to quick change, same thing, work in progress to quick change, because it's not possible.
Mm-hmm. So now we've got the state security, we've got the transition security, we have the lifecycle set up. Now what we need to do is a few more steps to make it actually usable for each of the files. What we have to do is assign this lifecycle to a category. So you can see here, it's already set to a standard category, and we'll look through the different file categories available and say, you know, let's also add it to the engineering category so that all our inventor data will move those files through this lifecycle. Go ahead and hit close, hit apply, and we're going to take a look at those categories now to get a little bit better understanding of those. Close that, and down here to categories. So here you can see all the different categories. Sometimes it pops up on a different section. In this case, we want to make sure we're under file categories. And the engineering category is what we just really want this lifecycle to be primarily used on. And so, we've got the basic release process. We have flexible release process and long lead time release process. We want the basic release process to be the default one.
It's the one we just made.
It's the one we just made. So we'll go ahead and click edit. Oh, not edit, sorry, assign. And this is kind of the opposite direction of when we were in life cycles that we assigned a category. Now we're doing the opposite. As a category, we can assign life cycles. So let's say we only want the basic release process. We'll go ahead and check it as default, select these others, and completely remove them from the category. All right, now you can see we only have basic release process available to us. Go ahead and close this now, and let's assign some files to that category and actually move these through. So I've got a couple of test parts here I made earlier, and we can see that right now they're just in the base category. We just uploaded them. They came in like this as default. And now we need to change the category to be engineering data. So we'll go up to category, engineering, and we can see that those will move to that. Click OK, and they transitioned over.
Ooh.
And now, if we want to change their state, we can see we're in the basic release process. This is the only one available to us because we took out those others. Again, here, if we had the long release, some of those others from earlier, we could change them, but we only have the basic release process here because that's all we want for these types of files.
Sometimes you want to have more, but you can't have more, so that's really cool. They give you full flexibility to do anything. Well, not anything, but a lot of things.
Yep.
So
in this case, because I'm administrator and the way we set up this, I have a few extra options that really I shouldn't have, but you know, we're just testing things out.
Yeah, because Eric's full admin right now.
That's right. So we can move things now to for review and click OK. And you'll notice this come up. This is not a normal thing. This is a custom extension that I made. When a file moves states, normally nothing happens. It just moves the states. But I created a little program which allows a notification to be emailed to people.
Yep. Shout out to Joseph. I see you're in here.
Hi, Joseph. For now, I'll click no. We don't need to worry about this. And you can see everything moved to the for review state. Now, again, if I wasn't administrator, like super administrator right now, we would see that these files are locked. And the way we had the flow chart set up, only the administrators and engineering should be able to see these files, and they would only be able to move them to work in progress or released. So that's really the basic setup for a simple life cycle. But what I want to do now is kind of go over some of the other options that you have for customization. The notification thing I just mentioned, that's a really cool one, I think. I might be biased.
I think you're just biased because you made it.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Some of the other things are on transitions. You actually can make some other stuff run. So I'm going to go back to the life cycle, and I'm going to look at a transition. Again, it's the Vault settings, behaviors, life cycles. Let's get back into this basic release process and take a look at a transition. So let's take a look at we want for review to released. We're going to edit this, and maybe you only want this process to happen, the for review to released, if certain criteria are met. Maybe you want a description and it can't be empty. You have to have some sort of description before you set it to released. You can set that criteria here. When you try to do that, it'll just say no if you don't have the description set.
Yeah, so if there's some criteria that you want people to fill out before they even send it to review, you know, maybe they need to fill out a certain field, or maybe there's like some property or something, you know, like you can do custom properties in here too, Eric.
Yeah.
So maybe, you know, they have to fill out a custom property per se before they even submit that to you. Yeah, this is how you do that. You just create these transition requirements and it happens.
Yes, it does. Another tab here, the Actions tab. This one's actually pretty cool too. So let's say you have a very complex life cycle and you want to use secondary revisions, tertiary revisions. You can set that here. Under this bump primary revision, you can select this to be bump secondary revision. So maybe you want it that every time you go from review back to WIP, you set a secondary revision so you can kind of see how many times you've gone through that. This is how you'd set that up.
That's where you get that rev that's like A.1 or A.2 or A.1.0. If you need to, if your lifecycle is that big and you want to do some secondary and tertiary revisions, and you can make sure that, Eric is not giving you bogus files for review every time.
Yes.
That's how you can figure that out. It's like,
yep. Another really cool one here is if you're going to a release state, it has to be to release state, and under the control tab, that released state thing is checked, and you have Vault 2018, there's a new feature, which is create a PDF using the job server.
yes.
So if you're moving a drawing from something to released, you can have it create a PDF as part of that
Well, it
process.
does a few things. It synchronizes the properties, updates the views, and generates PDFs. This is for DWG files and IDW files. We've gone over this a couple of times in a couple of AVAs with Irvin Hayes, one of the product managers at Autodesk. As of 2018.2, I think you can run the job server on the Vault server now.
You can always, it doesn't take a license.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that gets more complicated.
Yeah, if you want to know more about automatically publishing PDFs on release, let us know.
Yes, we can help.
That's probably true.
The other thing in here that's cool on transitions, you can run custom jobs. So you can add PowerShell jobs to the job processor and have them run when a file gets changed. So let's say you want to take a Vault file out and set it to a network folder that's getting picked up by your ERP system. That's how you would do it here. You can run pretty much whatever custom script you want, as long as you write it in PowerShell when you add to this custom job types. We just talked about revisions. I'm going to show you a little bit more about those revision process. So if we cancel out of all of these, down here, we're back to Vault settings, behaviors, revisions. This is where all the setup for your revisioning happens. We've got a standard alphabetic, numeric, and ASME, where we're skipping some of the letters that might look like others. So like there's no I, for instance. And we can either edit these or create our own. That's whatever we want. So let me just really quick run through that. I'm going to make a copy of this. I like it, but there's just a few tweaks I want. So I'm going to hit copy.
And we don't want to mess with the original for the sake of that.
Yes. I'm going to call it what I want. The category, I'm going to assign it just to file categories. I don't want it for items. Close that. And for the scheme format, again, you remember all of these. I'm going to again copy this ASME format and put AVA here. And here I can edit what it's going to look like. So maybe I want it to start not with A, but with initial release. And you can see the full list of what things will turn into down the road. And maybe you're just a terrible, terrible person and you want D to come before C. You can do that. Please don't, for the sake of everybody. But the option is there. So maybe if you get to 10 releases or something, you need some major milestone to come up, you can add that. So we'll go ahead and click OK. We can see we've got the new scheme format. And now for primary, we're going to want to set it to this new one. And maybe I like secondary as numeric. And tertiary, we can go back to the other one. This is how we set all of that. So once those are set, we'll click OK. Now we've got options for the revisioning scheme. So that's just real quick on that. And there's a lot of other stuff in here. I'll just mention one more because I know we're running out of time and there's lots of questions coming through. You'll notice before when we add files to Vault, they came in as base category type. And maybe you want all your IPT files to come in as engineering data. You would do that through rules. You can set up a rule that says, hey, if your file extension is the type IPT, I want you to be engineering. That's something you can set up here.
Yep.
I don't want to get too far into that because now
we can do that in AVA itself.
It's
Categories,
true.
items, all of those, I think, are worthy.
Yep, absolutely. So let's take a quick look back at this flow chart. And what we did here today is have you guys understand how to translate this plan into Vault. So we set up the groups, we added the members to groups, and then we signed permissions to act on the transitions, as well as permissions for each of the file states. And then we assigned that lifecycle to a category, and now we can use the files with all of that.
It's true.
And Nigel, I keep seeing questions pop up and you're answering some of them. Let's go ahead and move to those questions and get those answered.
There are questions, and I have been answering them, but there are some that we will both answer on and off. So, like I mentioned, this applies to Vault Workgroup and Vault Professional. Life cycles deal with revisions, and for those of you who are using Vault Basic, you might be used to what are called versions. Versions is every time you check in and check out a file, you create a version.
Yeah, let me show that here.
Yeah, revisions are reserved for when you like hit project milestones, when, like, say for example, you know, I've been releasing this file, it's been in production. You know what, we're gonna make a slight change to the model, and we're gonna release a version 2 or a version 2 of this assembly, when that version 2 is actually a new revision of the assembly.
Yeah.
It's a little difficult to understand at first. It took me a while to understand when I first started doing some of this stuff. Just know, versions is one thing, revisions is another thing. Life cycles are tied to revisions.
So using that, if we say go between work in progress to review, that's going to increase the version. If we check out and back in a file, that's going to increase a version. The only time in this setup that we're going to have a revision change is when we go from release to work in progress.
Yeah, that answers a couple questions that are in there. That's good.
Okay.
Can I use Vault Workgroup 2017 with Vault Server 2018? The answer is yes. In terms of the Vault clients, you can go back a year. I think it's 2. I'm 90% sure you can go back 2 years to the clients if you need to. So say, for example, you don't want to, you've got 300 computers to upgrade, you know, you're just the IT superstar. And you think you can only do like 150 a day? Don't worry, the other 150 won't be down as long as they're within that 2 versions back of the actual Vault server. So that's good. Does group roles, or do group roles, I guess, override the roles in the user as well as Vault availability? Does that override the user, or does which setting takes precedence when you've got user permissions and group permissions? So what happens when you've got multiple permissions in Vault is it takes the union between the 2. So it combines them all together. And this is where you get some of those issues with explicit denies.
Yes.
So it combines the 2 together. Any denies override the allows. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons why deny is a problem, because you normally, all the allows will union together okay.
Yep.
And then it's whatever permissions you have, then you have them. But once you start adding those denies, then the deny takes over, even though you're an administrator.
Allowed somewhere.
As a user, you were denied. And so now it's confusing.
Yeah, so just try not to use explicit denies if possible. But yeah, it is the union between the 2. So all of the allows will combine, and any denies will override the allows. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, Dustin, please reach out to us, and we will take care of that. Let's see here. Can Vault Workgroup automatically publish PDFs on release?
So if it's 2018 and you're using that Nito lifecycle change action, yes, you can.
Yeah, and we've set that up for a couple of people who need that functionality, or sometimes people were actually manually creating those PDFs, putting them to Vault so that people on the shop floor could read them.
I should also mention, if you don't have 2018, there are other ways we can do this.
Yeah.
We often work with a third-party program, Power Jobs with Cool Orange. That'll give you this functionality as well.
Yeah, so it's possible to do it in 2017. You just have to use another program to do it. In 2018, it just became native to Vault. You just do it, and it's cool. Those PDFs have their own lifecycle states. You create another lifecycle just for the PDFs. You can do things like copying the revision scheme from the actual file. Just know it only works with IDWs and DWG files. We had a customer ask the other day if you could do the same thing with like steps.
Yes.
On inventor files and stuff.
You can do steps.
Can you do steps? That's crazy.
With Cool Orange.
Yeah, with third-party programs, you can do pretty much anything, which is cool. And Eric, that's what Eric is at KETIV to do, is kind of figure out these crazy things. Is it possible?
Yes.
Like he mentioned earlier, he created that email notification thing on, what is it, any change state? Any state change, or is it released?
No, it's on specific ones.
Oh, okay, cool.
So or any of them. It's
yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's just meet the trigger and send an email.
Yep.
So let's see here. Can you have different default categories for different project folders? I don't know about folders. I know for files. We're gonna have to get back to you on that one, Billy.
I'm gonna have to read that over a couple of times.
Yeah. So I guess different project folders. So if you got folder A full of a bunch of stuff, folder B full of a bunch of stuff, everything in A takes space, everything in B takes engineering. I need to look.
I don't believe so.
I think you can only do it by file type.
Yeah. But that could be one of the restrictions. We'd have to look into that.
Yeah,
we'll get back to you.
Billy will reach back out to you. Any issues incorporating life cycles into an existing Vault? No.
Because you add it separately, and then you start introducing the files to the categories and then the life cycles.
Yeah. And today, Eric did everything using file life cycles. There's another thing called items. We'll get into that. Items is a completely different animal.
Yeah, items, files, those can all have life cycles.
They can all have life cycles. The difference between file and items, we'll go over that in a separate AVA. I have that scheduled out in the future, but we'll get into all that later. Let's see, is this being recorded and will it be available? Of course, all of these are available on our YouTube channel, and that is
youtube.com/KETIV Technologies.
It's true. It is true. If you go to YouTube and type KETIV AVA at the top, in the search bar, you will find our channel, and then you can go through.
We've got all of them.
Yeah, there's like 120 of them probably now.
Yep,
something like that. It's a lot of stuff, and it's not just AVA. So there's a bunch of other stuff up there too. Boom, my friend Mario. Mario's always asking the hard questions. Thanks, Mario. Is it possible to conditionally set primary or secondary revision bump when moving an item from release to work in progress?
Oh,
so only do it sometimes. Maybe?
I'd have to look into that one.
Exactly. There's probably going to have to be like some state in the middle.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
There has to be some state in the middle that you can go through to bump it or go around to not bump it. I'm assuming is probably what's going to need to happen there. So Mario, if you have my email address, reach out to me. We'll see if we can. Let me know what you're trying to do, because you're always trying to do the cool stuff. I'd be interested in figuring out what you're trying to do. Let us know, and we'll see if we can figure it out for you. Let's see here. We got Dwayne. Can you have multiple revision schemes in a single life cycle? Drawings in preliminary state are using numeric revision schemes, while released drawings use alpha. I don't think you can mix it.
No, I don't think you can mix. The closest is setting primary and secondary
to the different ones.
Yeah,
I'm almost certain that is the case.
Dwayne, we can get back to you. I'll just double check on that and
we'll just
let you know for sure.
Carlson or Irvin, they'll know for sure. But
I'll just test it when I'm done.
Yeah, it's true. We'll try to do it. I'm 95% sure that is the case.
Yeah, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah. Any reasoning for doing that? I'd like to know. Probably because they want to do a different release state to the shop floor or something. That'd be interesting to find out. I think that answers just about all the questions here. If you do have any questions moving forward, there are some more. Like I said, if you have any questions moving forward, jot down, take a screenshot of your screen right now and get our email address and get the phone number. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. That questions email address goes to a group of us here at KETIV. So we'll make sure that you get the right, allocation of technical resources or sales resources if needed.